Imagine this. You are one of Africa's most famous leaders. You're a hero of independence. You're on a peace mission halfway across the world in Vietnam, and you get a message that you no longer have a country to go back to. That's exactly what happened on February 24th, 1966, to Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah. This is the story of how it all fell apart. All right, so how are we going to tackle this? We're going to break it all down into 6 parts. First, we'll look at the man himself, this absolute titan. Then, the problems brewing inside Ghana. We'll zoom out to the Cold War chessboard, then dive into the nitty-gritty of the coup itself, Operation Cold Chop. And finally, we'll look at what happened right after and the long shadow this event still casts today. So, to really feel the impact of this coup, you first have to understand who Kwame Nkrumah was. I mean, this guy wasn't just a politician. He was a symbol for an entire continent, a figure who was larger than life. Now, listen to this quote. What's so wild about it is who said it. Colonel Afrifa, one of the main guys who actually overthrew Nkrumah. Even his enemies had to admit it. Nkrumah was the man who led Ghana to become the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence in 1957. That moment sent a jolt of pure hope across the globe. And his rise was just meteoric. I mean, look at this. In 57, he's the hero of independence. By 1960, he's the president of a brand new republic. But then, just 6 years later, it all comes crashing down. So you've got to ask yourself, how does the man who symbolized freedom for millions end up deposed and forced into exile? Well, it's complicated. The whole story really starts at home. By the mid-1960s, that amazing feeling from independence had started to fade, and some very real problems were bubbling up to the surface, eating away at Nkrumah's support. Economically, the country was in a tailspin. See, Nkrumah had these huge, bold plans to modernize Ghana overnight. Think massive dams, factories, the whole shebang. But these projects cost a fortune, and they were paid for with huge loans. Then, the price of cocoa, Ghana's main export, totally crashed. Suddenly, the country couldn't pay its bills. And for regular people, life got hard, real hard. Store shelves were empty, prices were insane, and the money in their pockets was worth less and less. Crucially, the military hadn't gotten a pay raise in almost 10 years. And as the economy got worse, the politics got uglier. The government started cracking down, hard. By 1961, more than 400 people were locked up as political prisoners. We're talking jailed with no trial, no judge, no jury. If you criticized the government, you risked disappearing into a cell. And this was the tool they used, the Preventive Detention Act. It was a law that basically gave the government a blank check to imprison anyone they wanted. Its most famous victim was J.B. Danquah. Now, this wasn't just some random opponent. This was one of Ghana's other founding fathers, Nkrumah's main rival. He was arrested under this act, and he died in prison. For a lot of people, that was the moment democracy in Ghana died with him. And this right here was the final nail in the coffin. A referendum passes, and pretty much everyone agrees it was rigged, that makes Ghana a one-party state. Nkrumah's party is the only party, and he is made president for life. A massive personality cult grew around him. They called him Asajefo, the Redeemer. And this just alienated everyone, intellectuals, traditional chiefs, even people in his own inner circle who were terrified of how much power was now in the hands of one man. But what was happening inside Ghana was only half the story. The country was also a piece on the giant global chessboard of the Cold War, stuck right between the US and the Soviet Union. You can just see these two forces heading right for each other. On one side, you have Nkrumah's big dream of Pan-Africanism, a united, socialist United States of Africa that would be a global superpower. He was officially non-aligned, but his socialist ideas and close friendships with the Soviet Union and China made the West very, very nervous. On the other side, you have the US and its allies, whose main goal was to stop communism from spreading and to protect their own economic interests in Africa. It was a collision course. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? For 50 years, it was all just rumors and whispers and flat-out denials. But now, because of declassified documents, we have a much clearer picture. Okay, now this is the smoking gun. This is a declassified memo from a top White House official written almost a full year before the coup happened. It says, clear as day, the plotters are keeping us briefed. It says, we have been helping to set up the situation. And it ends with, All in all, it looks good. This wasn't just the US watching from the sidelines, this was active encouragement. So you've got this pressure cooker of discontent at home, and you've got major world powers giving a nod and a wink from abroad. The plotters in the Ghanaian military and police knew. This was their moment. And the name they came up with is actually kind of perfect. Operation Cold Chop. In the local slang, it basically means a quick, surprise meal served up when you least expect it. It perfectly captures how swift and sudden this whole thing was going to be. The execution was flawless. They waited until Nkrumah was literally on the other side of the planet. Then, in the middle of the night, Colonel Kotoka told his soldiers a lie. He said they were deploying to protect Accra from a threat. Instead, they drove straight to the capital, and before the sun was even up, they seized the radio station, the airport, the presidential palace, everything. And then, at 6 a.m., this is what the entire country woke up to. That voice on the radio declaring that the myth surrounding Nkrumah has been broken. In that single moment, it was over. 9 years of rule wiped out in a few hours. So, Nkrumah's out. The big questions are, what happens next? And who's in charge now? Well, the guys who planned the coup immediately created a new government. It was called the National Liberation Council, the NLC. And let's be clear, this wasn't a transition to a new democracy. This was a junta, a military and police takeover, plain and simple. And they did not waste any time. They basically took Nkrumah's entire playbook and lit it on fire. His political party was banned, the prisoners were all freed, all the advisors from the Soviet Union and China kicked out. And on the economy, they did a complete 180, pivoting hard toward the West, inviting in the IMF and World Bank, the very institutions that were happy to see Nkrumah go. But the coup didn't just end one chapter of Ghana's history. It started a whole new one. And its legacy has cast a long, complicated shadow over the country for decades. And this right here is maybe the most crucial takeaway. For all its problems, Nkrumah's era was stable. No coups. But the 1966 coup opened Pandora's box. Look at this chart. In the 15 years that followed, there were 5 more successful coups. It basically told every ambitious colonel in the army that if you don't like the government, you can just overthrow it. It created a cycle of chaos. Which brings us right to the heart of the debate that still rages today. Was this all a CIA plot to kill the dream of a united Africa, as the Pan-Africanist view says? Or was it a homegrown revolution against a dictator who had bankrupted his country and silenced his own people? The real answer is probably a messy combination of both. So in the end, we're left with this huge, unresolved question. When we look back at Operation Cold Chop, what are we really seeing? Was it a liberation that saved Ghana from tyranny and economic ruin? Or was it a devastating betrayal, a neo-colonial takedown of a Pan-African dream? It's a question Ghana, and really all of us, are still trying to answer.